Imagine giving your all to a company so much that it nearly kills you only to get fired the moment you step back from the hospital. But when they came crawling back, you hit them with 3 words they never expected. Thanks, no thanks. And what happened next? Pure corporate karma. Let me take you back to the early 2000s. Picture this. A tiny PCB design and manufacturing shop. Small enough that everyone knew everyone's coffee order, but important enough that one mistake could cost a multi-million-dollar contract. That's where I was neck deep in circuit boards, spreadsheets, and supplier reports that no one else wanted to touch. I wasn't just an engineer, I was the bridge between our small operation and a colossal industry leader. Big customer. We weren't their main supplier, but we were damn close. Around 80% of our output was for them. They didn't just rely on us, they leaned hard. And I was the guy keeping them happy. I handled everything from failure rate analysis to engineering change requests, weekly reports, monthly updates, conference calls at ungodly hours. All technical, all boring to the untrained eye. But every bit of it mattered. It was a kind of work that no one noticed. Unless it wasn't done then, the world caught fire. I didn't complain, that was the job. And I knew that if I didn't do it, someone else would, probably worse. I found a rhythm, built systems, created templates and dashboards that made even big customers' tightest deadlines feel like clockwork. Their supplier manager once told me I was the reason we don't yell at your company. I took that as a compliment. There was no glory in what I did. No big bonuses, no awards. But I had pride in it. Quiet pride. The kind that comes from knowing you're the backbone of something unseen. Unthanked but essential. Now, to be clear, we weren't some golden startup with beanbags and kombucha on tap. This was grind culture. Long up, high stakes, a lean team where everyone did 2 or 3 jobs. I managed to become a sort of go-to person, not just for my own role, but for anything related to big customer. You had a question. You came to me, you needed data. I had it. You wanted to know why big customers suddenly changed their process. I'd already figured it out and sent an email. And through all of that, not once did anyone say, "You're doing too much." Not once did management step in to lighten the load. If anything, the better I did, the more they piled on. And because I handled it with a smile, no one saw the toll it was taking. By the time we were acquired by a larger startup, I'd already stretched myself thin. But when the new company rolled in, so did new energy. Not the good kind, more like a corporate thunderstorm. They brought a new GM with them. A man so full of himself he didn't even realize how little he understood his mission. Shift us from a manufacturer to a design-only firm. Kill the production side. License everything out in theory. Smart. In practice. A complete disregard for the people who built the company. Still, I kept my head down. Kept delivering. Because even as things changed, big customers still needed their reports. Still needed that one person who understood their quirks, their expectations, and their constantly shifting standards. And that person, still me. Funny thing is, while the new GM was busy shaking things up, he didn't even know I existed, at least not really. He saw my name on reports but never read them. He was so detached that when big customer sent over a formal supplier contract with a whole section on reporting requirements, he panicked. He dragged me into his office like it was an emergency, shoved the contract in my face and told me to figure out why we couldn't meet the reporting terms. I took a breath, read the whole section, then looked him straight in the eye and said, "We already meet every single one of these requirements." He stared at me like I'd spoken in tongues. "How is that possible?" he asked. "Simple," I told him. Big customer had handed me their reporting expectations over a year ago. I'd set up all the necessary protocols and had been sending those reports weekly, monthly, everything ever since. "You've been copied on every email," I added. He blinked. "I don't read your emails." I didn't say anything to that. I didn't need to. The silence said it all. What he didn't, he realized, and maybe still doesn't, is that while he was focused on changing the business model, I'd quietly built a relationship with our biggest client. One that wasn't just based on contracts or numbers, but trust, reliability, competence, all the things he lacked. Looking back now, that moment in his office was a turning point. I didn't know it yet, but the writing was on the wall. They didn't want guys like me anymore, guys who did the work behind the scenes without playing the corporate game. They wanted flashy ideas, not solid execution. And in their quest to become something new, they were ready to destroy what already worked. But I wasn't gone yet. Not by a long shot. What came next? Well, that's when things started to unravel. For them, there's a special kind of arrogance that only certain corporate execs seem to possess. The tight polo shoes, buzzword bingo champion, and a complete lack of understanding of the actual work that makes the company function. That was our new general manager. Let's call him Brad. Brad didn't walk into the company. He arrived like a storm front in a tailored suit, freshly imported from the parent startup that had recently acquired us. Brad's mission was clear: pivot the company from a manufacturing house to a lean, mean, IP sensing machine. And he wasn't wasting time playing nice. The first time I met Brad, he didn't shake hands, he made speeches. He talked about disruption, scalability, and productization, as if saying the words faster would make them mean more. But the message underneath the fluff was obvious. We were going to stop building our own products and start designing them for others to manufacture. Now, let me be clear, I wasn't against change, but this guy didn't know what he was changing. He didn't understand our workflows, our clients, or what actually kept the lights on. Especially not big customer. To Brad, they were just a line item. To me, they were a daily responsibility. The company was small enough that we all saw what he was doing. Trimming fat, restructuring roles, and slowly setting up for layoffs. It wasn't a surprise. The only surprise was how fast it all happened. Brad operated with the subtlety of a wrecking ball. He had zero clue what anyone actually did and made no effort to find out. He was like a new coach who benches the MVP because he doesn't understand the game stats. And when big customers sent over a formal supplier contract, something that should have been routine, he absolutely panicked. One afternoon he calls me into his office. He's red-faced, pacing, clutching a printed copy of the contract like it's a bomb. They want this level of reporting. He snaps, jabbing a finger at the page. You need to draft a response explaining why we can't meet these terms. I took the packet, scanned the section, and had to hold back a smirk. Actually, as it, we're already doing all of this. He stopped me. What? Every single item in their reporting section, we've been meeting it for over a year. I've got templates, distribution lists, archived reports. They're happy. You'll copy on all of it. He looked genuinely stunned, not in the impressed way, in the confused, how is this possible without me knowing kind of way. You're saying this has all been happening already? Every week, every month. You've been on the CC list. That's when I realized the man had never opened a single email from me. Not one. For over a year. That moment wasn't just embarrassing for him, it was revealing. Brad didn't want to understand the machine, he just wanted to replace it with something shinier, even if it meant tossing out the gears that made it run. After that interaction, I could feel the air shift. I wasn't just a cog anymore, I was a threat. I'd embarrassed him without meaning to. I showed him there was a whole operation humming along outside of his control. And for someone like Brad, that's intolerable. He started pulling me into fewer meetings, stopped asking questions, started consolidating roles that overlapped with mine. At one point, he assigned a junior staffer, someone who'd never touched customer reports before, to shadow me. It was laughable, like asking a lifeguard to watch a nuclear reactor. But I played along. I did my job. I kept my reports spotless. I kept a big customer happy. And I started preparing myself mentally for the inevitable. You could smell the layoffs coming. Like rain on hot asphalt, it was in the air. Rumors swirled. Restructuring, the usual buzzwords that mean some of you won't be here next week. Still, I didn't expect it to come that fast, and certainly not the way it did. It was a Sunday night when I collapsed in my apartment. I'd been ignoring some intense abdominal pain for days, brushing it off as stress or maybe food poisoning. Turned out it was an internal infection. Bad. By the time I got to the hospital, I was in rough shape. They kept me for the better part of a week. Antibiotics, IVs, no solid food. I couldn't think about work, I could barely stay conscious. It was the first time in years I'd been forced to completely unplug. But come Friday, I was recovering. Monday morning I was back at my desk, pale, exhausted, but committed. By 10 a.m. I was in a meeting room, being laid off. No warning, no thank you. Just a rehearsed speech about strategic restructuring and necessary pivots. Brad didn't even look me in the eye. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't even frown. I smiled, said I'd take 24 hours to review the paperwork, stood up, shook hands, and walked out. No drama, no scene, just quiet, professional dignity. But inside, inside I was already plotting the most devastating revenge of all. Not sabotage, not gossip, just success. Because if there's one thing men like Brad never see coming, it's a quiet man who walks away and lets the whole building collapse behind him. There's a moment when your body tells you, that's it. I've had enough. No more late nights, no more skipped meals, no more pushing through. And for me, that moment came without warning. For months, I'd been running on fumes, managing reports, responding to big customers, constant tweaks, covering for people, picking up slack. and navigating the twisted maze that Brad, the new GM, had turned the office into. Every day was a sprint, and every night ended with me telling myself, just a little longer, just until this project's done. But your body doesn't care about deadlines. It doesn't care about metrics or contracts. It just breaks. The pain started like a whisper, a tight feeling in my stomach, a little nausea. I brushed it off, probably just stress, or maybe a bad burrito. But it didn't stop. It got worse, sharper like knives twisting behind my ribs. I tried to tough it out because that's what I'd always done. Until Sunday night, I remembered vividly. I was home alone, getting ready for bed. I stood up to brush my teeth, and the room spun. The floor felt like quicksand. My knees buckled. Just a bed, beeping monitors, and endless questions from nurses and doctors about how long I'd been pushing through the pain. I didn't have the heart to tell them the truth, that I'd ignored every warning sign because I didn't feel like I could stop, because I didn't trust that anyone else would keep Big Customer from pulling the plug, because I didn't believe Brad or his team even knew how to do what I did, but mostly because I'd bought into the toxic lie that my worth came from being irreplaceable. By Friday I was cleared to go home, and by Monday morning, despite still being pale and weak and not entirely steady on my feet, I showed up at work. Like a fool, I should have stayed in bed. At 10 a.m., I got the tap on the shoulder. HR small meeting room. Though we regret to inform you, speech delivered without emotion. Brad wasn't even in the room. They said it was about restructuring, cost-cutting, that it had nothing to do with performance, which was laughable. Everyone knew who I was keeping happy, but I didn't let them see me flinch. I smiled, took the paperwork, said I'd review it and respond within 24 hours. I shook their hands, thanked them for the opportunity, and walked out with my head high. No yelling, no drama, just gone. And on the outside I looked like a man who took it all in stride. But inside I was a hurricane. This was during the early days of the 2009 recession. Layoffs were happening everywhere. The job market was a graveyard, and I had just been fired from the one place where I had built a reputation, a rhythm, and a relationship with the biggest client they had. I had every right to feel broken, but weirdly, I didn't, because the moment I walked out of that building, a strange peace washed over me, like I'd been holding my breath for years, and finally, I could exhale. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't responsible for holding everything together, for making magic out of chaos, for saving the company from its own incompetence. I was free, and despite the anxiety and the fear of what came next, I had one thing going for me. I knew my worth. It didn't take long for me to find something new. Just a month later, I landed a job in the same field, smaller role, less pay, but the culture, night and day, respectful human. No one was trying to crush you to prove a point. And just when I was settling in, rebuilding, the phone rang. It was my old boss, not Brad the GM, but the guy who'd technically been above me on paper, the one who'd cried when I got laid off. He was calling with a tone I'd never heard from him before. Desperation. He asked about the reports, the ones I'd built, the ones that kept Big Customer from asking hard questions. He needed help, and I could hear it in his voice. He was lost. I could have played dumb, could have said figure it out. He was trying to run the ship I'd kept afloat for years, and he was doing it with a blindfold on. Was hoping you could walk me through the reporting process for Big Customer, he said, half whispering like he was embarrassed. I almost felt bad for him. He genuinely had no clue what I did day to day. He'd always trusted me to just handle it. But now, with Brad's grand restructuring in motion, he had no choice but to get involved. I kept it professional, answered every question truthfully, but I didn't offer anything extra. No step-by-step guidance, no shortcuts, no saving. I raised an eyebrow at my former position. Right, look, I've been authorized to offer you your job back. Full reinstatement. I have almost laughed. This was the same guy who laid me off the minute I returned from the hospital. The same guy who didn't bother to attend a meeting when I was cut. Now, he was practically begging, but I kept my voice calm. Thanks. No thanks. A pause. Then his tone shifted passive-aggressive, like he was trying to reassert some power. You know, he said slowly, if we officially offer you your job back and you refuse, that could affect your unemployment benefits. Ah, there it was. The threat. The corporate squeeze. But what Brad didn't know was that I'd already landed on my feet. I wasn't collecting unemployment anymore. I didn't need that job or their pity offer. I was out, but he thought he had leverage. So I just smiled and replied, thanks, no thanks. Click. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 days later, my old boss called again. More composed this time, but still clearly under pressure. I know you said no, he began, but we'd like to make it official. We're prepared to bring you back with full service bridged. And that's when I finally let the silence do the talking. I didn't answer. He asked again. I calmly said, "Thanks. No thanks." Then I hung up. By now the desperation was palpable. These weren't just calls, they were like, and I was the last one who knew where the knots were tied. Word got around quickly. A former colleague reached out. Someone still in the trenches. He'd heard about the calls, about the chaos, about the fact that big customer had already started asking pointed questions, things like why is the monthly quality report missing, and why are failure trend charts 3 weeks late. About a month after Brad's quiet exit, word spread that the company had been sold. The parent startup had dumped the shop, probably to cut their losses, on sold it to a much larger, more stable supplier. It wasn't a shutdown, thankfully. My colleagues kept their jobs. My old boss stayed on. The only people who didn't make the transition, senior management. You could call it poetic justice. I call it natural consequences. Because you can only build on someone else's back for so long before they stand up and walk away. That's exactly what I did. And the empire they thought they were building, it couldn't stand without its foundation. I kept in touch with a few former co-workers. They told me the new parent company cleaned house, but kept the core team intact, reinvested in the systems I'd built, hired actual technical managers, started listening to the engineers again. In a strange way, the collapse had saved them, but not before it served me the coldest, cleanest revenge I could have asked for. I was gone, I was thriving, and they were begging for me to come back. They thought I was just another replaceable employee. Turns out, I was the last one holding the line. After Brad disappeared from the company like a stain wiped clean, something shifted, not just within their walls, but within me. The dynamic had flipped entirely. I wasn't the one knocking on doors anymore. They were. And every knock was a reminder. They needed me more than I ever needed them. The thing about power, not about titles or salaries or who has the corner office. Real power is control over your own choices. And now, I held all the cards. I still remember the moment it truly hit me. I was sitting in my new office, not flashy but peaceful, quiet, respectful. I was sipping cheap coffee and responding to emails without panic or pressure. No one was yelling. No one was cornering me with unrealistic demands. I had space to breathe. And then my phone buzzed. A text from another ex-coworker. "Brad's gone, you hear?" That was the moment I realized this wasn't just a minor stumble for the old company. This was the start of a collapse. The dominoes were falling, and I hadn't even touched them. They'd removed the one person who could handle big customer demands without even realizing what they were losing. Brad had dismissed me like a disposable part of the machine, only to find out that without that part, the entire engine seized up. I didn't sabotage anything. I didn't leak secrets. I didn't rally anyone against the company. All I did was nothing. I didn't return. I didn't save them. And that silence was louder than any revenge plot I could have dreamed up. It was sweet, clean, and poetic. Because every offer they made, every incentive, every benefit they tried to dangle in front of me was a confession. They didn't know how deep my value ran until it was gone. Now, they were on their knees, trying to rewind the clock. But life doesn't come with a rewind button. Only a play button. Mine was already playing a better track. I started getting more calls, not just from the old company, but from people in the industry apparently. Word had spread. Big customer noticed my absence too. They weren't shy about voicing their concerns to the new management. In an industry where relationships are currency, mine was gold. Suddenly I wasn't just another employee. I was a hot commodity. I got invited to panels, asked to consult, even approached by recruiters who had ignored me a year earlier. Funny how that works, huh? When you're quiet, loyal, and competent, people overlook you. But when your absence creates chaos, they remember exactly who you are. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't playing defense. I was leading at my new job. They noticed it too. My manager pulled me into a 101 after hearing about the calls. "We didn't realize you were this connected," he said, half impressed, half curious. I just smiled. You never know how deep someone's roots go until you try to transplant them. They offered me a raise 2 weeks later. Not massive, but symbolic. They saw my value before I had to prove it. That's what respect looks like. Meanwhile, back at my old company, the rest of the story unfolded like a slow-burning drama. The company that acquired them restructured again, this time with surgical precision. They cleared out dead weight, including everyone in upper management who'd been part of Brad's vision. They kept the engineers, the actual workers, the ones who made things run. One of my old colleagues emailed me. "It's weird without you here, but in a good way. Like, everything feels like it's getting repaired." I told him I was glad, and I meant it, because while revenge stories are usually about destruction, mine was about transformation. I didn't need to tear anyone down. I just let them destroy themselves by undervaluing the one person they couldn't afford to lose. And when they came crawling back, I didn't slam the door in their faces. I just kept it shut. That's what made it powerful. They had to sit in that silence. They had to feel the consequences of their arrogance. I could have taken the job back, taken the raise, the stock, maybe even coasted back into my old routine with a little more respect. But I knew it wouldn't last, because people like Brad don't change. And companies that allow people like Brad to make decisions, they only care when they're on fire. I wasn't interested in being their fire extinguisher anymore. I had moved on. I had leveled up, and they were stuck in the ruins of their own bad choices. And I didn't have to raise my voice or make a scene to make it happen. All I had to do was say no. There is something uniquely satisfying about saying no to someone who once thought they had all the power over you. Not a loud, spiteful no. Not a dramatic door slam. Just a calm, steady, deliberate refusal that echoes through the halls long after the conversation ends. And that's exactly what I gave them. Each time they reached out to pull me back in, I responded with 3 simple words. Thanks, no explanation. No bargaining, no drama, just a clear line in the sand. At first, they didn't get it. The first call from Brad had come with that fake cheerfulness style one people use when they're pretending things are fine. He offered me my job back like it was a gift, like he was doing me a favor. Let's get you back in here, he'd said, like I was a misplaced file that just needed no hard feelings, right? I gave him my first no.com/polite final. He tried to twist it. Just think about what you're giving up. PTO, stock, seniority. I gave him my second. No. Then came the threat the old will report your refusal to unemployment routine. As if I didn't already have another job. As if I'd be scared into crawling back. That earned him no number 3. And by then, I could practically hear the panic rising in his voice. Next came my old boss. He wasn't smug. He was pleading. He told me the company was willing to undo everything, reinstate my benefits, backdate my stock options, even bridge my service so it was like I'd never left. They weren't offering me a job. They were begging for a reset button. And in any other world, I might have said yes. For the money, for the comfort, for the team I'd once cared about. But here's the thing. A yes would have been a reward for them. A reward for treating people like cogs. A reward for cutting me loose when I was at my weakest. A reward for only recognizing value after it was gone. So instead I smiled and said it again. Thanks, no thanks. He asked me to sign a formal statement of refusal, and I gave him the most powerful answer of all. Thanks, no thanks. That was when it started to spread. Whispers across the office. From department to department he said no again. Even with his stock, he didn't even negotiate. People couldn't believe it, because when you say no like that confidently, repeatedly, without bitterness, it hits different. It makes people think. It shakes the system. In a corporate world where fear rules and silence is expected, saying no becomes an act of rebellion, especially when you say it from a place of strength. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't angry. I was simply done. And that made it unforgettable. It didn't take long before the ripple effect hit. Employees who'd been afraid to speak up started asking questions. Why did we really lay him off? Why are we scrambling to get him back? What does he know that we don't? Because let's be honest, if I was truly replaceable, why all the effort to reverse it? Every no I gave chipped away at their illusion of control. And every time they repeated my refusal to someone else, it chipped away at their credibility. It was the no that echoed in meetings, in whispered hallway conversations, in nervous boardroom updates. The no that made other employees realize, wait, we can walk away. I didn't plan for any of that, but I'll admit it felt damn good. The irony, I never wanted revenge, not really, I just wanted respect, a fair shake, the chance to do good work without being discarded like a broken tool. But when they couldn't offer that, I chose something better. And that one decision flipped the power dynamic on its head. I found out later that my refusal had become a case study internally. Leadership cited me in meetings trying to figure out what went wrong. They analyzed the loss of a critical employee. They called it a retention failure. One exec even suggested I should have been flagged as a key resource months earlier. But it was all hindsight. They saw my value too late. They'd made their bed, and now they were lying in it without a clue how to fix the mess. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I'd gotten a raise at my new company, not because I asked, but because they saw me. My contributions were acknowledged. My boundaries were respected. I was finally in a place that understood leadership wasn't about control, it was about trust. And I trusted them. That made all the difference. Sometimes, I'd think back to those phone calls. The pauses, the disbelief in their voices. They hadn't expected resistance. They hadn't prepared for a polite no. because they'd spent so long mistaking silence for weakness. But I wasn't silent anymore, and I wasn't interested in being anyone's fallback plan. They had their chance, they blew it. All I did was say no. There's a kind of peace that comes not from winning loudly, but from walking away quietly and letting the silence say everything. After the dust settled, after Brad vanished, after the company got sold, after every desperate callback faded into the distance, I found myself in a space I hadn't known in years. No constant fire drills, no emotionally stunted managers, no pressure to carry a business on my back while being treated like a replaceable bolt. Just quiet work, honest conversations, a team that valued clarity over chaos. My new role didn't come with the same paycheck, not yet, anyway, but it came with something far more valuable. Not performative employee of the month nonsense, but real, earned respect. People will ask my opinion because they trusted it. Leaders listened when I pointed out problems, and when I said I need time, they gave it without a second thought. I remember sitting in a meeting about 6 months in, looking around at the room. No one was yelling. No one was trying to take credit for someone else's work. There was no panic, no guilt-tripping, no thinly veiled threats disguised as feedback. It was calm, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was surviving my job. I was actually enjoying it. That was my revenge. Not lawsuits, not angry emails, not revenge plots, just a life they couldn't touch. The funny part, they probably still think I'm bitter, that I wake up mad, that I replay what happened over and over, but they're wrong. I don't think about them unless someone brings it up, and even then, I just smile. Not a smug grin, a quiet one, the kind that comes from knowing you walked away with your dignity. When they tried to take everything from you, I'd hear little updates now and then. An old coworker would email, mention a new restructuring. Someone else from the company would message me to say they finally left too. The place kept spinning, shedding its skin, pretending every failure was part of the plan. But I never once regretted saying no. If anything, I wish I'd done it sooner. That's the lesson, really. Not every battle needs to be fought. Some victories are won just by leaving the battlefield. They tried to play power games. I declined the invitation. They tried to put me back in the system. I built my own. Now, I sleep better. I work smarter. I smile more. And most importantly, I don't carry that weight anymore. It's on them now. All I did was walk away. And that, it turns out, was the most powerful move of all. Years later, the story still comes up. Someone from the old company will send a LinkedIn message. Man, they should have never let you go. Others who watched it all unfold from the sidelines will say, you really dodged a bullet. And every time, I just nod and say, yeah, I did. Because I didn't just leave a company, I left behind a mindset. One that said loyalty is a one-way street. One that rewards silence with burnout and punishes value with indifference. But I walked away, on my terms. And somehow, that simple act of leaving reshaped everything. Today my career looks completely different. The company I joined after the layoff, I stayed there for a while, built my foundation back up. They treated me well, promoted me based on merit, and never once made me feel like a cog. Eventually I moved on again, but not out of desperation, out of choice. Each step after that was intentional, strategic, controlled, and most importantly mine. No one's yanking me into back rooms now. No one's making empty promises after gutting my department. No one's gaslighting me into thinking I'm lucky to be underpaid and overworked. I'm not just employed, I'm empowered. I earn less stress and more sleep. I don't open work emails at midnight or measure my worth by unread messages. I take days off without guilt. And when I speak, people listen. That's not just success. That's revenge. Not the kind that makes headlines, but the kind that matters. See, the best revenge stories aren't always about getting back at someone. Sometimes, they're about refusing to give them any more of your energy. I never got an apology. Never got a thank you for the systems I built or the clients I kept happy. And I'm okay with that, because I got something better. Peace, purpose, and a future built on my terms, not the company that laid me off. It's a footnote now. A cautionary tale shared over coffee or in whispered hallway chats. Don't be like them. People say they let their best people walk away. But the real takeaway isn't just about what they lost. It's about what I found. Freedom, clarity. A path that didn't depend on being indispensable to people who never saw me. In the end, my greatest revenge wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in proving to myself that I didn't need them to be right. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge isn't loud, it's living better without them. If you felt that satisfaction, to drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe for more real-life revenge stories that prove silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Stick around. The best stories are just getting started.